Second set of panelists are the Millers and Robert Davis. Charley Miller's family began ranching in the Elkhorn Valley at the Elkhorn Ranch in 1945. Elkhorn operates as a guest ranch and a rangeland grazing operation that supports a herd of about 115 horses, comprised of saddle horses and breeding stock. Charley grew up on the ranch, attended the University of Arizona, and assumed overall management of the ranch in 1983. One of his first actions upon assuming management was to initiate range monitoring on the ranch, guided by Dan Robinette and the U.S. Natural Resources Conservation Service, and soon thereafter began an intensive mesquite clearing project on about 10% of the ranch. In 1995, Charley and his wife Mary were among the founding members of the Altar Valley Conservation Alliance. The Millers have served on the board of WSARE since it began. Charley serves on its Science Advisory Board, and Mary serves as its Executive Director. The Millers were awarded the 2013 Range Managers of the Year Award by the Arizona section of the Society for Range Management. This spring, Mary was recognized by Inside Tucson Business as a nonprofit champion at the 2018 Women of Influence Awards. And then we've got Robert Davis, who grew up in Salt Lake City. As a boy, he spent a considerable amount of time hiking and exploring. There he gained a love for mountains, wilderness, and the West. He graduated from the University of Utah with a degree in geography in 1983, accepted a commission in the military, then spent the next 25 years with the Marine Corps traveling the world. In 2008, he left the Marines to write, teach, learn, and explore other opportunities. Robert holds a master's in national security and strategic studies from the U.S. Naval War College and Geographic Information Systems Technology from the University of Arizona. He is a certified mapping scientist by the American Society for Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing. Altar Valley Conservation Alliance contracts Robert to manage its geographic information system, and he is an innovative partner on many Altar Valley projects. So there we have it.
Stand over here so I can. So I'm wearing my Elkhorn hat today, not my Alliance hat. And before I talk about this at all, this is truly Charley's project. He much prefers doing projects to public speaking, so I'm the mouth, he's the doer. So first off, just some background. Oh wait, one more moment. And I really am appreciative to Robert for helping us put this presentation together and analysis that we shared. As some background, Charley's family purchased the Elkhorn Ranch in 1945, and the intent at that time was to operate it as a guest ranch to raise horses, and also at that time there were cattle on the ranch. The cattle were removed from the operation in the early 1980s. The grazing program just wasn't sustainable after the 70s drought. So since then, the ranch has supported about 115, 125 saddle horses and breeding stock on about 10,000 acres. So we're much smaller than some of our neighbors. And as Sarah mentioned, we began working with NRCS in 1983. There had been conservation projects done on the ranch earlier than that, but that's when we really began to work more extensively with monitoring. So when Charley got to the ranch as its manager, he'd grown up there, but when he returned to the ranch, it was after the 70s drought, made big family decisions about pulling the cattle off, and there was a real need to try to increase the productivity of the ranch. Working with Dan and NRCS, one of the idea that they came up with was to really work on brush control. So the idea was that on about 10% of the ranch, they designed a brush control project. Before the treatment, as you can see in this picture, the mesquite densities were very high, 50% plus. There was severe gully erosion in many areas. The understory vegetation was largely absent. It was a pretty tough situation. So in this project, they used mechanical clearing, bulldozer, Charlie did about how many acres in summer?
I could do about a third of an acre an hour, so
Okay.
I probably average about 100 acres a summer
Right.
at the moment.
So this took, they started the clearing in '84 and finished it in 1990. Belts of vegetation were left for wildlife habitat, and the brush was pushed into the gullies to begin treating the erosion situation. Where are we, Robert? I'm trying to look
I
back
think we're there.
and forth
We
here.
can
Hanging in there?
show this after the treatment was done,
Yep.
right there. And then we can head down to the next one, which is the maintenance.
So, great to do the mechanical treatment, but then how do you maintain it? The concept always was that fire would be used as the maintenance tool. The Elkhorn Valley Conservation Alliance has been working on prescribed fire for decades now. It's not easy to get done on the ground. Meanwhile, we had a lot of regrowth coming back in, and so again, working with NRCS, and now Barry Wallace comes back into the picture at Elkhorn. A program was put together to use a backpack sprayer to hand treat the regrowth. And so once again, Charlie, this time on his own 2 feet, and some other folks who work for us, began a project of going through all of these areas outlined are the areas we treated mechanically, and all of those areas we've gone back in and retreated with the backpack sprayer to treat the regrowth. They used Tordon and then discovered that they needed to do a retreatment with Remedy. And so today, basically all of these areas have had these 2 treatments. Maybe we can, Charlie's got all the info on technical details, so maybe during the questions, if anyone wants to know details, we can return to that. So that's what we've done. In thinking about this presentation, as well as the Alliance's explorations of what's been happening with brush treatment, had the idea to ask Robert to use his magic, I just call it magic, to ask him if there's any way that we could look at aerial photography over time and sort of step back and take a look at how things have changed in these areas and kind of correlate that with our treatments. So I'm going to turn it over to Robert to tell that story.
Thanks. Just a moment on the medium we're using here. This is a story map. It's live, so it's requiring the internet to use this. So if it fails, I have a backup, and then I have a backup to the backup. But if it fails, just bear with me. And the cool thing about this is this map over here on the right is tied to the stuff on the left. If you can imagine, the stuff on the left is kind of like a blog or a long work document. The stuff on the right is just tied to it. So as we move down, the map's going to change off to the right. So a lot of these will look the same. So keep your eye on the map on the right, because the little red dots show where the woody vegetation is. As Mary said, it gives us a good idea comparing those images on top of each other to see the change, and also we can analyze that. The things that we come up with using a classification method, a couple different types of classification methods. You can count those pixels, and once you count the pixels, you can count the total number of pixels, and you can come up with a percentage, which is what we've done throughout these various images. Aerial data in Arizona started to be collected, I think, in 1936. It was really put together well in 1937. A photogrammetrist got a hold of it and put it together in a very nice, easy-to-read map that was orthorectified. And all that stuff, if you want to get a hold of the good copies, all that stuff's up at ASU. And they've got imagery from 1937 and 1935 of pretty much the eastern side of Arizona. So that's where we start. But there's imagery also in the 50s and the 60s, but the closest one to when the treatment started was 1974, and those are actually just regular images. They're not ortho-rectified or anything, they're just aerial images. And we went ahead and put those together using photogrammetry and also ortho-rectified them. And you can see on the left, that's the imagery from 1974, and it's really good imagery. You know, it was wet film taken about 15,000 feet with a 150 millimeter lens. So it's really quite good imagery. And from that stuff on the left, we were able to classify the dark spots, and this was taken in June. So the only stuff that's out there that's still dark is going to be woody vegetation or shadows. So we were able to take that and then classify out what is woody vegetation, and that's off on the right-hand side there. So all that red is woody vegetation, and that consumes about 46% of that area in there. And Dan estimates that 10 years later, before the mechanical treatment started, that had grown to 60 to 70%. So that's kind of our start with the amount of woody vegetation in this particular plot. And we only did this plot just kind of as a test to see how we were doing. And our next set of imagery was 1996, and the big difference in this one is its color, but it's still just 3 bands. We get the 4 bands later on. That first image was just 1 band, black or white, which is another shade of black. Black. So anyway, this one is in color, and you can see after the treatment, when we do that classification analysis, we're down to about 15% of woody vegetation. So right off the bat, there's a big decrease. Let's see. And now we're at 2003, which is lousy imagery as far as I'm concerned, and it's still an ortho quad, so it's still 3-band. I can only imagine that the really good imagery was going somewhere else in 2003. But we had to change our classification technique on this one. The previous ones and the ones after this, I just let the computer figure out, you know, where it's called an unsupervised classification. I just let the computer figure it out. I said 2 things, we want dark things and we want light things, you go figure it out. It didn't work on this. So we had to do what's called a supervised classification, where I had to intervene and say, no, this is this and this is that, and then train the computer on what's what. And we came up with this, which is 12%, and this is, we began Tordon treatment, and this is after the Tordon treatment, so we're down from 15 to 12%. And then our next set of imagery is 2007, and that's Nate. So we're adding a 4th band on that, so we're adding near infrared on this, and we're down to about 7%. And did we start another treatment of remedy here? No, it's the next one. So we're down to 7% in 2007.
Yeah, so at that point, both treatments have been done.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
did I
in
screw that up?
2007, we've done 2 different hand
Okay.
applications in 2 different fields.
Okay, so we're down to 7%, and then in 2010, we get some really good sharp imagery, color 4-band. It's really good. We're down to just over 1%. We're at 1.1% woody coverage on this, and we might have been helped out a little bit, I'm not sure, by the Elkhorn fire of 2009, and that's what that fire looked like in 2009. So it got completely that area there. It didn't get some of the other areas up north of Pig Mountain, but it certainly got this one there. So there's that variable.
That was a fairly big
Yep,
addition.
that's it. Oops. Well, I'll just keep going. And then in 2017, we're up to about 5%. And some of that may be because in 2017, we reduced the pixel size to 0.6 meters. All the rest of the stuff was, except for that very early stuff, was 1 meter resolution. Now we're at 0.6 meters, so you can actually get 3 pixels into where 1 pixel used to be. So the resolution was increased a little bit, so that might have brought out some more of the woody vegetation. But I did take, just to kind of make sure, I stripped out everything that was less than a meter on this particular analysis on the right-hand side, and we were only down 4%. So something's happening. It's probably coming back a little bit. And then, let's see where we're at. This is, the graph on the left is kind of what I just described. It's not linear. Of course, you get, over 20 years between the first aerial photo there, 74 to 96, and then a number of years between those digital ortho quads, and then the NAPE imagery starts to come in a little bit more regular, so you kind of see a pattern there. And you can zoom in on that a little bit. It's not making any sense back there. Okay, so let me close out of that. And off on the right this is bull pasture, I think, during actually it looks like that was immediately after you were doing the bulldozing.
Right.
And that's what it looked like before was that. So, and that's it for the aerial analysis. And like I said, depending on where you're at, you can get a lot of different aerial imagery for a particular spot going back to, in Arizona anyway, to about 1936, 1937.
So just to put some perspective on this about why has this treatment been really important to our ranch. The big story here is that we did this very intensive treatment on 10% of the ranch, but the most important part of the story is that we in essence were working on the whole ranch. By making 10% much more productive, we were able to create much better grazing flexibility, more management flexibility for the entire ranch. So we feel that we've seen big increases in health condition productivity ranch-wide by what we did in this area. We've definitely seen higher productivity. Gully erosion trends have gone from worsening to much more stable. A lot of areas, if you didn't really know what you were looking for, you would never know there had been problems there. We definitely have a lot of lamans. At the time when this project was started, we seeded with lamans. That was part of the solution at the time. We are seeing in our monitoring that we are having native species coming back in areas. Comes and goes, but we have seen those trends. We are also looking at other methods of brush control in the ranch. We have a prescribed fire plan for an area of the ranch that hasn't burned within our family's tenure there. We are also looking at trying some of the aerial work as part of a demo project with the Alliance. We've been doing a lot of thinking and talking since our last workshop, really trying to think about how do we decide what to do, where and when, what kind of soils, what kind of densities, what are the roles of trees in some soils as nurse plants, what do we do with reseeding? There's so many questions out there, but it clearly seems that the brush control, the grassland restoration, erosion control, this really is an integrated package that's an important part of what we need to be doing out there. And it's definitely made a huge difference in how our ranch has functioned, and I think we have weathered some very difficult drought times in the last decades, and we are 100% sure that the work we did on this brush control set our ranch up to be a lot more resilient than it would have been had we not done that. So that's the overview. Charlie's the master of the specifics. So if there's questions, you have to help answer them. But anyway, that's about it.
Karen, mine's just a simple question, and I somehow missed this. Was it a cut stump treatment? I didn't get what the treatment was.
We initially grubbed.
Okay.
Yeah, we grubbed it, and then we came back with the basal application of herbicide. Basal stand.
Maybe you could comment on why you ended up doing the two treatments.
Well, the Tordon has a very high rate of control of cat claw, and but it didn't have a very high rate of control of mesquite.
Okay.
So then we came back with Remedy, and that kind of cleaned the mesquite up, and some of surviving.
So you were doing that because you were getting basil sprouting or sprouting on them?
What was that?
You did those basil treatments because you were getting sprouting?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. There were, in some of those areas, we didn't count that, but I believe that Dan estimated some of the heavier areas at the time of about 300 trees per acre. There wasn't any understory, but there was a lot of seed. And so we started having regrowth, particularly in the cacklon, within what, Dan, you remember what it is, Dan?
Pretty quick.
Yeah, within,
It was in the 80s. It
yeah,
evolved pretty quick.
yeah, within the same decade.
How did you decide on that location?
Well, what we treated primarily was the really dense stands of trees in the lighter soils, sandier soils, I guess I would call them. There's probably a lot better name for them, but and by doing that, we were able to hold the horses off of, not totally off the mountain slopes. They used the whole place, but they didn't stress the mountain slopes, which are primarily native species. And so by putting in the love grass, we were able to take the pressure off the native species, and we've had better recovery in those as well.
It seemed like from the aerial imagery that the mesquite cover was most persistent in the drainages or low-lying areas. I'm not sure if that's true, but would establishing a buffer area there be consistent with your goal of not treating in the drainage areas for either wildlife habitat and also to reduce a buffer?
For wildlife?
Yeah, just where you wouldn't treat.
We did leave buffers in most of the drainages.
Okay, so.
The gullies that we filled were erosion gullies, not major washes. And we did leave, yeah, there you go.
You can see how.
Now, some of the time I was running the cat, I might have cheated a little bit as far as the width of the buffers, but we did leave them.
So that was intentional.
My idea of 60 feet could sometimes get a little thin.
And it's all private land, correct?
Yeah, it's all private land.
That's an important thing to mention about this project, given that it was private land and it was, some of the cultural resource permitting was not a factor at that time.
Well, we didn't, yeah. I think if we were doing it again with what we know, there were probably areas that we wouldn't have done. Quite frankly, ignorance can be bliss, and I've always been pretty blissful. But, and that's the important thing, and I think it's affected a lot of what we've done since. We don't, well, grubbing, when we did that, diesel prices were really low. Grubbing is a lot more expensive now, even as a relative thing than it was in the 80s. We really have to, it was very effective. There was regrowth, but it was very effective treatment. It just was, it would be pretty expensive to do that.
Another thing I'll mention with the hand treatment, the backpack spraying, that's been something that Charley's done, and we have a couple of other crew over the years that have helped with it, but it's been a very big time commitment, and as ranchers, we often value our time pretty we don't value it much. We do have some cost figures that we put together. I don't have them in my head. We've given them to NRCS, and we could provide them, but it has been a way that we could do it over time. If there's lean years or generous years, you could do what you had time and could afford to do. So it's been a pretty effective way to keep after it without breaking the bank in any one year.
We could do about 100 acres of $20 a year and 100 acres of granite, so it's been a slow process. A lot of footwork. Yeah, but slower.